Hi there, this is Matthew Lane, co-host of Because the Universe, and it would seem like you have missed our first episode, but don't worry, it's right here for you to catch up on, so I hope you enjoy it.
Your award-winning student radio station.
This is your role.
Good morning, you are listening to Because the Universe. It's 11 o'clock Saturday and this is Radio at Warwick. You are listening to Harry Manners, the human-sized intelligent goldfish.
And you're also listening to Matthew Lane, resident physicist, theologian and all-round extraordinaire.
Oh, that was a really nice introduction.
I know, I prepared it.
Oh, you are so nice to me, thank you very much. So, like I said, this is Because the Universe, your satirical science radio show, and we are going to be talking about lots of science-related insanity today. Let me give you a rundown of what we are going to be talking about. Actually, no, just before I give you a rundown of what we're going to be talking about, I should introduce our third co-host. This is the most important co-host. If you've been on the Raw website, you will have seen that the picture for Because the Universe has a duck on it, and if you're looking in on the webcam now, I'm holding up the duck. This is Ducky, the soft duck. This show is the brainchild of Ducky, and Ducky will be introducing our topic for the week. Anyway, a rundown of the show. The first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at some science-related news from the week, have a chat about that, we'll break for a song, we'll introduce our guest panel who are going to be discussing our topic with us, we'll introduce you later. We will then have a discussion of that topic. After that, we'll have another song, continue the discussion, another song, and then we're going to have a segment called Ask Harry. Now,
Indeed.
What we would like you to do is, and Harry's going to explain how you could do this in a moment, we would like you to send in a science-related question. And
a
Harry,
basic science question.
Or a non-basic one.
Or a non-basic. Or a non-basic.
Harry is going to do his best to answer it. We can't promise that you will know any more by the end than you knew at
In
the
fact, we
beginning.
can almost guarantee you won't know a single thing more than you did at the start.
Yeah, but he's going to have to speak for a minute. So, Harry, if people want to send in a question for Ask Harry, how should they go about doing that?
We've got a few ways that you can get a hold of us. First off, you can get hold of us through our Facebook page. So it's just /Because the Universe. We also have a Twitter account @Cos the Universe. That is Cos the Universe, COS, Cos the Universe. Also, you can get a hold of us through becausetheuniverse@AOL.com. So just call in, say, ask Harry, and your question, and send that in, and we'll get right back to you.
That is the plan. So, Harry, let's get right on to business. Shall we have a look at the news that's been going on for the last couple of weeks?
Absolutely.
Science-related news.
Well, first off, we've got the Antares rocket disaster out in Virginia. You've probably heard a lot about that. So one of the private rockets organised by NASA to go up and refuel the International Space Station exploded very shortly after takeoff.
It did. And that was a pretty bad thing.
I would say that qualifies as a bad thing. A bad thing, yes.
Yeah. We will come back to talk about that in a minute, but here's a slightly different tone for a different story. Australian scientists develop beer that doesn't give you a hangover. Now, why does it not surprise me that that's the Australians?
Not at all. It would be the Australians.
It is brilliant. So basically what they've done is they've put electrolytes into the beer so that you don't get so dehydrated. But the researchers have said some really amusing things. It sounds like they have absolutely no idea how society works. They accept that telling people what they should and shouldn't do is often a fruitless endeavour, so working towards reducing danger is probably a better way to approach the situation. And then this is a direct quote from one of the scientists. We know that beer is a very popular drink with people.
With people. These human beings who you speak of.
Yeah. So if you're going to live in the real world, you can either spend your time telling people what they shouldn't do, or you can work on ways of reducing the danger of some of these socialised activities. This is drawn from a textbook, obviously. Yeah,
yes, these people aren't human beings in the ordinary sense.
No.
Academics.
But that may well be coming on the market. Beer that won't get you so hungover.
I can't wait.
Okay. Harry, over to you. Another news story.
Second major story for the day is, of course, Virgin Galactic's major disaster out in the Mojave Desert. So this is Spaceship One, the hugely popular private enterprise, which is planning to launch independent orbital flights for private individuals. We've obviously heard of stuff like Katy Perry, Bill Gates, all that, that crowd.
Yep.
$100,000 per flight. It was, billed to hugely advance the rate of space exploration in the future, and it's gone and crashed in the desert.
It's been a really, really bad week.
I think we can safely say that space exploration is getting it in the teeth this week.
It is.
Yeah.
It's not great. I've got another one. This is from the Journal of Experimental Biology, October 29th. Birds large and small hop over obstacles in similar ways. Phew, I had been waiting for this to be done.
Thank God.
I'd been, sleepless nights waiting for this research. A turkey moves over a step with a strategy similar to the one used by tiny quail and huge ostriches. And you will be pleased to know that there are videos online of birds jumping over obstacles.
Oh, thank God. All the times that I've been laying awake at night wishing that there were videos of that.
Yeah. There is actually a reason for doing this, though. It's to do with building robots that can walk. And we haven't been walking for all that long. Birds, you can trace back how long they've been walking for.
So there is a justifiable reason.
Years, theropod dinosaurs. So there is a justifiable reason. But even so, just the word.
Why would you word it like that?
I know. And this is brilliant. This is from an article on this piece of research. The researchers brought in 5 species of birds into the lab: quail, pheasant, guinea fowl, North American turkey, and ostriches. But because ostriches are capable of killing people, they had to hand raise the birds for 2 years so that the researchers, wouldn't die. Members of the other species had to have their wings clipped so they wouldn't fly away. Can you imagine? Can you imagine if the person who'd invested in this research came? This is like a preliminary trial, say, and they hadn't hand-raised the ostriches, and they hadn't clipped the wings. All the birds would have flown away, and all the researchers would be dead.
A bloodbath, ostrich feathers, and no birds.
I know. Who knew that could be such a danger? Anyway.
Yes.
Oh dear. And then we do have one final one. This is from the Australians again, before we go back to properly talking about space. So the Australians seem to be doing a lot.
Very busy at the moment.
Koala chlamydia vaccine trial raises hope. I had been despairing.
And we can all breathe a sigh of relief.
Yes, we can. They say they've successfully tested a vaccine aimed at protecting wild koalas from chlamydia.
Well, it's been a pandemic, I feel, in the last few months. I mean, the Ebola it's just completely overshadowed by this. The koala chlamydia crisis was reaching a peak.
This strain of chlamydia that affects koalas can lead to blindness, infertility, and death among the animals. I've got another quote from a scientist who was involved in this. It's all very, very promising, and it's not just that it's doing the right thing from an immune response point of view, but it's actually protecting a significant number of them out in the wild, climbing trees. So climbing trees gives koalas chlamydia.
I see. So it can't get much worse, actually, in my fear of going to Australia. So if you go into the sea, the sharks will kill you. If you put your hand under a rock, a spider will bite you. Touch a tree, you will get chlamydia. Fantastic. Dear. Right, before we get on with the show, I think we're going to break for a song. So this is SON, Tremors.
12:51 a.m.
And we are back. This is Because the Universe on Radio at Warwick. Welcome back. We are going to go on with the show now. So just to remind everyone about the ways to get in contact with us. We have 3 channels. We have Twitter, so at costheuniverse.com. That is costheuniverse.com. You can also get in touch with us through Facebook, /BecauseTheUniverse. And also you can get in contact through our email address, becausetheuniverse@aol.com. I think we've got a little plan.
Yeah, so we're going to introduce the panel now. So let's go straight over to them. Let's get a feel for who they are. Harry, this is another Harry. So we've got Harry Manners. I'm going to refer to you, Harry, as in co-host Harry, as Mr. Manners.
Mr. Manners. I am Mr. Manners.
Just to make it clear. And then we've got Harry Amos. Tell us a bit about yourself, Harry.
Well, I am not Mr. Manners.
Okay, good.
Just to clarify that. Yep. I am Mr. Amos.
Okay, Mr. Amos.
I'm a second-year PPE student, and are we going to do 2?
Yeah, we are.
Yes.
So, Harry, could you give me one truth and one lie about yourself?
So, the first statement is that I have cycled up Mount Snowdon.
Ooh, okay.
And the second statement is that I've met the Queen.
Okay, Mr. Manners, what do we think? Which one's true?
I think he could have met the Queen.
I know he does a lot of cycling.
Yeah, he does do a lot of cycling. But that might be a ploy.
That might be a ploy.
Or it could be double bluffing.
It could be.
I think we might have to come back to it. Let's go to the other guest. We'll bring him in to see if he can help us. So, Akshay, if you could tell us about yourself, tell us your subject, and a truth and a lie.
Hi, I'm Akshay Doshi. I'm a biomedical scientist, and I'm from London. A truth and a lie. I have been on Concorde, as in on a flight on Concorde.
Yeah.
That's one of my statements. Second statement, I've read the entire works of Sherlock Holmes.
Ooh.
When I say of, I don't mean by. It's by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle.
I think that you could have read all of the Sherlock Holmes, because that is quite a thing to do, isn't it? I think that's something that somebody would like to say about themselves.
That's true. What was the first one? What was the...
It's been on Concord.
Been on Concord.
Okay, Harry, I think that you have cycled up that mountain. Akshay, I think that you have read those books.
Yes, I think so.
Tell us, Harry.
Both lies.
Both. That's
Both
cheating.
lies.
So typical of a PPE student to do some trickery.
Subterfuge.
Oh,
Can't believe it.
Akshay.
I've read the entire works of Sherlock Holmes.
Ah, yes, we know
One.
it. We know
got
it.
one.
Excellent.
So
Excellent.
that is our panel. Thank you very much for coming in, and
Indeed,
we're gonna now reveal the topic, the question, the science-related question that we want to discuss this week. So I'm just gonna take Ducky, the little soft duck that is here in the studio, to my ear, and he's gonna tell me what it is that we're going to be talking about.
Tense moment. Oh yes.
Okay.
I can see the duck talking.
Yeah, if you're on webcam, you can.
Yeah, you can log in.
You
You can log into the Raw website. You can see live
riveting.
Ducky
Okay,
talking
that's really good.
to the presenter.
That's really good. Okay, thank you. So Ducky has just told me the question we're going to be addressing today is: do we have to die?
Wow.
Sounds
Do
a
we
bit
have to
morbid.
die?
There are enough morbid conversations about death going on that we'll try and keep this light.
Indeed. Matt, isn't it fortuitous that now that we know the topic, we just happen to have a BioMed and a philosophy student in today with us?
Would you look at this? There is research that people have brought with them in the
I can't believe it.
It's incredible. The chance of that happening is
Unbelievable.
just unbelievable. Okay, so that's it. Do we have to die? That's what we're going to be talking about. So let's dive into that. I'm actually going to turn straight to Mr. Manners. You are old. You're an old man.
I am an old
so
man.
being probably
yes.
the closest to natural death.
Of course, yes. Of the four of us, I am the most decrepit, ancient creature to ever crawl out of the ocean.
You feel young.
Ah,
Thank you.
isn't that wonderful? That's why you keep me around.
Yeah, just so that I feel young.
Absolutely.
What do you think, Harry? What is death?
Death. Well, I consider death to be a cessation of life, but of course that's an incredibly general and broad definition of the term. So, I mean, having never witnessed it myself, beyond a simple just accidentally stepping on an ant or something like that, I haven't even seen pets die.
No.
So I don't think I'm qualified to say what death is, because it's this nebulous concept that I have. So I think it is worth turning over to some technical definitions here.
So luckily we have a BioMed student who could give us a definition of death. But before that, other Harry,
Indeed.
with your philosophy,
Use your philosophy.
Philosophize. What is death?
I feel like I've been put on the on the spot here.
You have been.
You have, yes, definitely.
Again, I would rather turn to the BioMed students to give us a more technical definition, but the
luckily,
cessation of life, I feel, is
on.
general enough for my subject. We like making general statements about the universe.
Okay, so that wasn't really mind-boggling. I expected something that would just leave
Something
you
grand
confused.
and, yes, completely, sweeping.
So come on, shed some light.
Well, you guys said about the cessation of life, which is indeed correct. It is the cessation of life, but that's inclusive of all vital function of the body, including heartbeat and no neural activity in the brain. Because if you've got no neural activity in the brain, but you've still got your heart beating, technically you're only brain dead, whereas all your other vital processings are still ongoing. So that's why there's a big sort of, should we turn him off, should we not?
See, now that's interesting, because I've heard that neural activity can persist for a number of hours after death. Not in any kind of coordinated sense, but in kind of remnant electrical impulses and so forth.
That is indeed correct. It's like when someone gets, sorry to be morbid, but when someone gets decapitated, for example, you do have minor muscles twitching and blinking and things, but there's no coordinated movement. It's just neurons firing in the brain randomly.
So how is it that, in the medical profession, they go about distinguishing between what is coordinated electrical activity that corresponds to life and what is just the random firing of neurons and nerves and so forth?
It'll be more sort of twitchings and things like that of the body will be definitely more less coordinated. But if there's definitely if you try to put your hand on a patient that you think is maybe brain dead, then there's a definite grip or something.
I see. So it's an action stimulus response kind of thing,
exactly,
rather than a random impulse.
Exactly that.
So if you could just summarize that in one sentence, we're saying, do we have to die? Just to be clear, what is it that we're saying is death in that circumstance?
As a scientist, as a biologist and a medic, I would say that death is the cessation of life, including all vital processes, including the heartbeat and brain neuron activity, and including breathing.
Yes. So if you never died,
yes,
you would just continue to have heart function. Your brain would continue to function,
and you'd keep breathing.
And you would keep breathing
without. This can be by action of a ventilator, or it could just be you breathing.
I see. So you can be artificially maintained as
Absolutely.
alive.
Now that's interesting.
Indeed.
So does that mean that you could keep somebody going
against their will
forever?
Against their will, probably. But we don't have that much space or resources or time.
But it is possible.
In theory, I don't see why not.
You don't see why not. Okay. So we've kind of got a sketchy.
But their brain would not function.
Their brain. Would.
Oh, I just need to qualify that their brain they wouldn't be able to move and walk, and they'll be bedridden effectively,
right.
And have no sort of
a vegetative state.
In a vegetative state, exactly.
I see.
So there isn't any way to try and artificially keep the brain going.
Not that I know of.
Not that you know of. So we've kind of got what is a preliminary sketchy. Do we have to die? No. But is that the sort of life that we're talking about? Also, probably no.
Indeed.
Okay, so let's move on in terms of what we're talking about. Let's just jump quickly to ideas of human psychology, religion, and culture. Because the minute you've got death and life, we kind of need to just talk about that. So let's go to the PPE student. What would you say if I said, do we have to die? Give me some implications in terms of psychology, culture, and religion.
Well, big, broad questions.
Yep.
So I would definitely say, from a kind of philosophical point of view, that a death essentially imbues life with a certain kind of meaning. We have a certain kind of hurry to get things done. Say we could live forever, would we actually get around to doing shopping and so on? Probably not. Or even getting up in the morning. I found it difficult enough to get up this morning.
So you'd never get up if you
probably
were a mortal.
not. No,
I'm
I'd live in a vegetative state voluntarily.
Voluntarily, right?
So
right.
But every kind of religion, faith has something to say on death. Whether that's kind of the Judeo-Christian concept of kind of heaven and hell, and where do we go after death? Is there a kind of an afterlife that is not biologically definable? All these kind of questions enter the fray. We're
probably not going to go too near those questions, because they're kind of.
I am aware I am on a science show.
Well, no, that's completely fine. It's more that we do want to stick to the science, and we're actually going outside of the presuppositions of science. If you start talking about a non-measurable reality, so maybe another show, Harry, we'll specifically address that, and we'll have you on, and we'll have you can just. Why don't we just switch seats?
We should. You can host. Harry will be in the presenter sheet. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so, and you've already touched on this, and I think you've said, yes, does death imbue life with meaning?
Yes,
and
certainly.
You said that you probably wouldn't get out of bed if you were living.
Yeah, probably not. I think a number of my good close friends would agree with me there.
I'm not sure that I do.
You don't agree?
No.
Well, you see, that I agree with Harry. Harry agrees with Harry. Especially from a secular, atheist point of view, the only thing that defines my life is within respect to the fact that I have a limited time span, and therefore whatever I do with the life that I'm given is all that's ever going to matter. And therefore, if you remove that...
Say you were given more life.
Yes. Well, of course,
not
everyone
infinite,
would want more life, just more, but you could always extend that. I just want a little bit more, and I think with each increase, each increment would be a decrement to the overall meaning of each piece.
Do you think? Because for me personally, I would feel more like if you had a much longer life, you can achieve much more. It wouldn't have this negative effect in my mind of, oh, well...
It depends on who you are, really.
It does.
I think it depends if you are...
If the kind of person to sit around eating Cheetos all day, then it's just another eternity of eating Cheetos.
And they would make more money,
Indeed. You would eventually just drown in crisp packets.
Because you couldn't be bothered to get up and put it in the bin, could you?
And essentially, as well, you've got to consider charity work and so on. Absolutely, if none of us could die... Well, where would
we're going to come on. We're going to come on
Yes.
to whether or not we could actually not die, and if we could not die, what would the ramifications of that be? So I'm just going to put a hold on that point because I want to come to it properly.
I am held.
You are held. Great. So let's touch on the biology before we break for a song.
Indeed.
Let's talk about the three things that I want to talk about then are the Hayflick limit, telomeres, and the golden age of 94. So let's go to the BioMed and just see briefly what you have to say.
So quickly, so the Hayflick limit is directly related to telomeres. The telomere is the bit of the cell which defines how long the cell will live. The cell will live as about 75 to 100 cell divisions. And every time the cell divides, imagine a piece of string getting shorter and shorter. That's the telomere in the cell.
I see.
75 to 100 divisions is the Hayflick limit. That's the limit that that's the limit that the cell can undergo in cell division.
So this is a human cell.
A human cell, yeah, of course, yes.
I see.
So this would be a human body cell or somatocell, and it would so this piece of string would get shorter and shorter until it gets to a point where programmed cell death occurs, where the cell can't carry on making more copies of itself and it dies.
Now,
that's
why is
very
that?
interesting.
What is the evolutionary purpose?
Indeed, because the implication of that is that death itself is programmed into our genes.
It is.
So it must be useful.
It is useful in the sense that so you got variation in genetics. So if we just carried on living and had no offspring, and there was a disease that could wipe us out, we'd all be gone. There'd be mass extinction of the human race.
Immediately.
Exactly. However, if we've got offspring, which are, I say offspring, I mean children. If we have children that are resistant to some sort of disease,
so different to us.
Yeah,
in
the respect that we have genetic variation. Yeah. So they've got a slight mutation on a gene or something where they can carry on living, whereas we would die. Then we have no need to make children if we could live forever. But now we do have a need for children because we're not going to live forever.
Yeah.
So our children would be resistant to diseases and such, whereas we might die.
So kind of what we're saying here is that because the aim of evolution is not to live forever, it's just to pass on that genetic information
to pass on
the
the
next
genes.
generation.
Yes.
The minute that enters the picture, the previous generation in some way becomes a carrier.
Indeed.
It's no longer
Obsolete
the aim,
almost.
it's the obsolete. So essentially, as soon as sexual reproduction enters in evolutionary time, as soon as it enters the picture, so does death.
Effectively, yes. Because you could argue, although we have a wonderful life and it's amazing, the reason for life may be just the passing on of genes. Apart from that, there is no need to do anything else.
I see. So the current generation is essentially consuming resources as soon as they've reproduced, and therefore they should be gotten out of the picture.
So the price we pay for sex
is death.
Effectively, yes, and a child, and you have to bring the child up because we have a child that can't sustain itself until they're about, 16, 18. From then, if they can sustain themselves, then it would be in the best interest to die.
Yeah. So just before we break to a song, there's a medical ethicist who made this brilliant statement. He talked about the fact that when he was at university, when he was studying, and he realised that the price that we're paying for sex is death, he said, oh no, that's okay. I'm quite all right with that. As he's gotten older, he's began to change his mind. So you are listening to Because the Universe. We're talking about whether or not we need to die. Shall we break for a song, Harry?
Indeed, let's break for a song. This is Maybe Tomorrow by the Stereophonics.
On 12:51 a.m.
and online, this is Your Raw.
Hi there, guys. We're back. This is Because the Universe on Radio Warwick. I am Harry Manners, and we are with Matthew Lane, Harry Amos, and Akshay Doshi. And
so we have been discussing,
yes.
Do we have to die?
Indeed.
We've covered half the science. We're going to cover the second half of the science. Then we're going to talk about should we? If you could live forever, should you actually die? I do just want to briefly point something out, though. Ducky the soft duck, who's kind of in charge of what we're doing here, has decided that all of you are too good at being on the radio. So you've been given a maze that you must try and fill in.
Wonderful, of course.
Because we wouldn't want you to actually be any good at this. And whoever does the best, whoever fills the maze in the best, will win a prize.
A prize?
What will the price be?
I'm not telling you. That's a surprise.
Wonderful.
So both Harrys have got a maze. Actually, you've got a maze.
Just to let everyone know, the presenter who is in charge of all of the board
Yeah,
it
so
also has a maze.
Mr. Manners is in charge of the soundboard. He's
Aren't I
trying to
lucky?
do that. And so he's trying to do that, talk,
wonderful.
and do a maze. You're going to lose, my friend.
I'm going to lose big time.
Right, anyway. Do contact us for the Ask Harry segment. We would like you to send in a science-related question for Harry, and he will have to answer it at the end, whether or not you will know any more.
Indeed. So just to give the contact details out once again, we have 3 channels. You can get through us on Facebook, so / Because the Universe, also on Twitter, at CosTheUniverse, that is CosTheUniverse, COS, or on email, we have becausetheuniverse@aol.com.
Wonderful. So let's go back to, do we have to die? We've just started talking about the biology here, and we kind of want to shift along to, could what we know about biology allow us in some way to not die? Akshay, start us off.
Yes. So far, what do we know about death? Well, we know what death is, and I've sort of defined it earlier on. But can we really not die? Effectively, probably not.
Why?
Unfortunately, because the amount of resources and funding that would require such a leap would be far, far greater than what anybody could ever afford.
I see. So you're saying it's an economic and sociological limitation as opposed to strictly biological.
Oh, if you're talking strictly in biology,
theoretically,
money no object, time no object,
yes,
and ethical issues no object.
Yep.
Then potentially there are other species of animal that have lived immortal.
Yeah. So let's talk about a couple of those. This is quite interesting. I've got 4 examples here of animals who just don't seem to die. You've mentioned this to me just a minute ago. Actually.
Yes.
Lobsters are the well-known example.
Lobsters have no way of actually they live forever. That their cells get to a point which they can just keep dividing. They can repair themselves. For example, us, we die because our cells can. The telomere length, like I mentioned, is effectively stopping the process of repair. So that's why we get old and wrinkly and
but
die.
Lobsters don't have that.
They can keep repairing.
So essentially, the bigger and older the lobster.
Yes.
No change on whether it's old or young, or it just kind of seems the same.
Exactly. So we've tried this in human cells. They've gone into a lab and we've tried this in vitro, effectively, which means out in a lab, not in a body, but in the lab. We've got some human cells. We've added more telomeres. We thought we were going to see cancerous growth and cell proliferation. So we thought we were going to see a tumor form. However, that didn't happen. These mortal aging cells turned effectively immortal.
I see. So just
for this was with human cells.
This was with human cells.
Just for the non-scientific listeners, can you clarify a few of those terms? So you're talking about cell proliferation.
Okay, sorry.
Telomeres. Can we remind people what they mean? Just
cell proliferation is the unblocked, effectively dividing of cells. So a tumor is a cancer is effectively a tumor, and it's caused by without ceasing cell division. So the cell keeps dividing and dividing and dividing and dividing, and all resources from your body will get diverted, like blood vessels and things and nerves will get diverted to that tumor. So you can't. So it's not in your body effectively. Yeah. So you effectively get cancer. However, when this was done with the telomeres, they didn't find cancerous cell growth. They just found an immortal cell, effectively. Well, a re-aged cell.
Right. Right. So the largest lobster ever found came in at 51.5 pounds.
Wow, that is a big lobster.
Which is huge.
I have no idea how big that would be. I mean, if you've held a lobster, they can be quite big and yet weigh nothing.
Have you held a lobster?
I have held a lobster.
I haven't held a lobster.
Well, it's an experience you just have to have.
Okay.
You know, it's one of those things.
Good, I must do that.
Put it on your bucket list.
Having said that about lobsters, that they can't die, it's quite funny how we as humans have gone, ooh, this tastes nice. Let's put it in a pan.
Absolutely.
And it's not even that. It's just we keep them in restaurants alive for as long as we can, and then they go straight in the pan.
Yeah. Well, what is also interesting about them is that they become more sexually active the older they are. So the bigger they are, the stronger they are, and the more sexually active they become.
That sounds like a good way to be.
Yeah. Just, I mean, in terms of
what's not to say
surviving.
What's not to say that some humans are like that?
But they get stronger and stronger.
People die.
Yeah, people do get weaker.
People do
Experimental evidence would go against that, I think. Yeah.
I think so. Another example, turtles technically stuck as teenagers. They didn't do this for ages, but when one of these really big turtles died recently, they cut it open, and all of its organs were exactly the same as though it were a teenage turtle.
That is shocking.
Its organs had not aged.
The one organism that you would think is permanently old.
They just look ancient.
They just look old, and yet they're the youngest.
They're teenage.
Permanently teenagers.
Permanently teen. So... what this is
well, indeed,
saying,
actually, isn't that why they are permanently lazing around, just so slow, can't be bothered to do anything? Because they're teenagers, like they never grow out of it.
Oh, because they're teenagers.
Yes, indeed.
Perpetual. Well, that's a horrible thought.
Isn't it? Hundreds of years of lazy, emotional angst.
This is also interesting. It looks like they're able to turn off their hearts at will.
Well, that's kind of a very impotent ability, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes. Watch this, guys.
Yeah, so all of that is called the Don Draper effect. The fact that these turtles don't age a day since hitting sexual maturity.
Could I just pipe in for a quick second?
Absolutely.
I finished my maze.
Oh, wow.
I have prepared for this.
Oh, so
We
dear.
have preparations.
There's another maze.
There's another maze here.
There's another maze. A
Everyone
backup
else,
maze.
This should... you need to panic.
Absolutely. I mean...
maze, I can see Harry trying to study the maze that I've just been given.
Yes. Oh, no. Showing the board and this.
Oh, you got stuck.
Oh,
well, carry on, Harry. Carry on. Another example. I'm not sure how to say this. It's BD. Bedelloid?
Bedelloid, maybe? We'll go with
They survive by stealing DNA from other species. So they haven't sexually
I think that's just Deloid. It's a silent B.
Just Deloid. Okay. They haven't sexually reproduced, that is, in about 80 million years. So how do they keep their genetic material fresh? They just steal it from anything lying around.
Steal DNA.
That their DNA has been described like a genetic mosaic.
That is absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, so this is another one that just doesn't seem to die.
That is very interesting. So what if... Well, of course, we can't engineer ourselves to be like that because we would cease to be what we are. I mean, we say that the amount of genes that separate us from our closest relatives is a tiny fraction, and therefore we're a very finely tuned machine, a very complicated organism.
Absolutely. We're effectively the only species that has high-level thinking.
Indeed.
So you can teach. So our closest relatives would be simians, so primates and things.
Yes.
So a fundamental key study that was done on simian animals was making them learn sign language and things. So there was actually quite an interesting case of a monkey that learned sign language and understood comedy and slapstick.
Wow.
So it could understand puns. So it was asked, "What do you find hard?" It said two things. It said, "This stone is hard," and it said, "This work is hard." That's at a fundamental level. That is amazing.
That's incredible.
And for the slapstick, it tied its keeper's shoelaces together and then signed "Chase me" and ran away.
So that is incredible.
I want to go back to the fact that this thing of hard.
Yes, the work is hard.
Because that may not be immediately obvious to people why that is quite so incredible.
No, that is
incredible.
Revolutionary. Yes.
Because of the semantics of the English language, for example. Because you can say hard and it can take two completely different meanings.
Indeed.
People learning English as a second language find this quite difficult because I could say this topic is quite hard, or I could say this topic is difficult. But hard has effectively two meanings, and I should presume everybody here knows what they mean. Yes. But if you think about someone, which isn't even our species, learning that.
The mental dexterity required to differentiate between two abstract concepts.
However, having said that, I said we are the only one that have, we are the only species that have high level thinking. It's because he's never ever signed the word why. Why do I exist? Why is this happening? We're the only species that's asked why.
I see. Right. Perhaps he has all the answers.
Perhaps he has.
This is like a super chimp.
Clearly, he's hilarious. Yeah. So,
which is the most important
he's just sitting there knowing all the answers and enjoying the fact that all these ignorant people are wandering around giving him bananas.
Why are they
giving him bananas?
Yes. So we've just said that no, we couldn't engineer ourselves to live together. I have something interesting here, which is looking at yeast. And something called a nematode. Now they're separated by 1.5 billion years of evolution, but they're relatively young in time. And so what we're saying here is their genes should be similar, and you can use them to try and work out which genes it is in these organisms that are going to be controlling aging. What is interesting, though, is that humans are more similar to nematodes.
Nematode worms, I think it is.
Nematode worms than nematodes are to yeast. right? So by looking at nematodes, you should be able to draw, maybe, some conclusions about humans. And they've done this. It says, we reasoned that if a particular gene modulates both aging in yeast and nematodes, there is a good chance that gene plays a similar role in people. The point I'm making is there is research happening to try and work out which genes there are in humans that decide when we age. Now, what this leads on to is this idea of this golden age of 94. Now, a study was done with fruit flies. Now, fruit flies have a much shorter lifespan, obviously, than humans, so it's quite easy to observe their entire lifespan. And what they found was that past a certain age, these fruit flies stopped aging.
Just stopped. So they were already degraded enough that they would die, but they stopped aging. And what they were able to do in this study was work with these fruit flies in such a way that some of them had degraded by such an amount that they continued to live after this golden age when they stopped aging. So you essentially had immortal fruit flies. Immortal fruit flies. Can you imagine the horror?
The horror.
That sounds terrifying. But but the principle is genetic modification can produce immortality artificially.
In that, it seems that after a certain age, you stop aging. So as long as you're not really ill by the time you hit that age,
you won't age.
Maybe. I mean, this is all a bit speculative.
Of course, it's a much simpler organism.
It's fruit flies, so you can't really... the scientists, biologists especially, use fruit flies. The scientific name is Drosophila melanogaster. That's the genus and species. They use these in a wide array of studies because they've got such a short lifespan, which is about 60 days. And they've got sexual maturity. They reach sexual maturity at 14 days, so it's quite easy just to have a look at and study. And the whole genome has been sequenced of Drosophila. The whole genome has been sequenced, so we know exactly what each gene does. Effectively, we know where each gene is, and by editing things, you can basically work out what each gene does by basically taking it out or putting it in, see what it does.
Yeah. And
what you said on how you can make the fruit fly live for a greater period of time, it would take a great deal of resources to do the same to a human. Although we have been sequenced, I think 2005, 2004, when a whole genome got sequenced. 2004 it was, sorry. And our connections are so much more complex that we can't really compare ourselves to fruit flies.
No. On the subject of the Human Genome Project, which started in 1990, ran on for 13 or 14 years, stopped in 2004. It cost £3 billion, well, £2.7 billion, mapped the almost 3 billion nucleotides in our DNA. By 2004, by the end of this program, you could do the same job for £20,000 and it would take about 3 months. In 2011, it was still costing about £20,000, but you could do it in a week. So we've said, it would take a large amount of resource and all of that, but just take that as an example.
The rate of advance that we can accomplish.
The rate of advance.
It's basically, for this, it was technological advance rather than scientific advance. Right. The science was already there. Yeah. We just didn't have the computer systems that were large enough or powerful enough. If you take it in another 100 years, you could probably get it down to a day or a few hours. Yeah. You could probably prick your finger, get a little bit of blood, put it in a machine and go, this is your entire genome.
So the $100 5-minute human genome,
yes, which I believe is currently possible,
is kind of on its way. Is kind of what we're saying.
Yes, absolutely. Right. I don't. There's no scientific limit. The only limit is technology. Technology.
So
fantastic.
I want to now go to the more, if we could live forever, which is going to be by genetic manipulation, it's going to be by gene therapy, it's going to be trying to just extend lifespan past a certain point. It's those sorts of things. Maybe it's theoretically possible. Is it plausible in reality? What would some of the ramifications be, Mr. Amos?
Well, multiple, but it also depends as well on whether you're talking about a kind of a biological immortality, i.e. imagining a possible world. That's what we tend to do in philosophy, a nice possible world where you could live forever under conditions of peace, no illness, etc. Then it wouldn't be too much different to the world we live in today, I would believe, because at a certain point you're still going to have scarcity of resources, differences of opinion, wars, famines,
so this kind of advance isn't going to transcend the fundamental human condition. We are still going to have all the same problems that we had before. It's just that it's going to be one generation instead of many.
Yeah, it's interesting. We always seem on a kind of media level to be obsessed with this idea of living forever.
Yes.
So it's been explored in Doctor Who, of course, a number of times. Let's not mention the science and scientific validity.
It is fiction.
It is fiction.
It is brilliant.
Yes.
It is brilliant. But as well, there was a Torchwood series a couple of years ago which explored the idea. It was a very horrific world, but it was not one of biological immortality. It was one of essential immortality, i.e. you could not die even if someone stabbed you,
decapitated
killed you.
Yes,
whereas if you
manner
just
of
take the turtle or the lobster,
death.
if you just stick a knife in it,
it will die.
Yeah. Effectively, what you were saying about the Torchwood series, what you had, which I saw, was effectively just people getting incinerated because there was no other way. Is that really a world we want to live in?
No, not at all.
Yes.
And again, this is where ultimately, if we were faced with actual knowledge of what the possible world would look like, we'd probably agree that death serves some kind of purpose or function.
Saying that existence in which you cannot be killed is one that is, the unlikeliness of it is approaching. No, that wouldn't happen.
Yeah, it's never going to happen.
Because even if you upload your consciousness into a computer bank, that can be destroyed.
That can be destroyed, yes. So you'd have to make an infinite copies across all space of a single consciousness to make it
over the long period of time
forever. And
yes.
So if we're talking about a world of biological immortality, using that phrase, obviously, say it doesn't mean anything, doesn't matter. You're still going to have a huge amount of problems. So, for example, on a very economic, political level, who would get the treatment first?
Because there is still going to be a cost.
Yes. So, say if I'm a very rich person, I can afford this treatment. Say, like with the cost of going to the moon, and that's reducing massively, and celebrities want to go out and see the moon. Similarly, they'll want to get immortality treatment. They can live forever. It's quite likely that perhaps you get this development of an underclass of not immortals.
An underclass of mortals.
Yes.
And an upper class of immortals.
Yeah, and you'd never see the change of the elite.
Reigning for
forever,
eternal generation. Yes.
And again, that's not necessarily a world I'd want to live in.
No.
So yeah, how would you go about trying to...
Plus, also, you've got to bear in mind, we've got pain, we've still got death, essentially. Yep. So even if all of us could get the treatment at the same time by some miracle of it being extremely cheap to do, all of us living forever would have to have one-child policies. You would have lots of
less than that, really,
ramifications.
We wouldn't need children. We wouldn't need children.
No,
that's the point.
You'd hit this number, and that would be it.
Yeah,
but could you stop people having children? My girlfriend in particular is extremely keen on children in general, as your good host Matt will know.
Yeah, so I know Harry and I know his other half. I cannot believe that you just managed to bring Natasha and children
onto the show.
On the radio.
Live on the radio. Well done.
Okay, well done, Harry. Great. Right, so we're going to wrap that up. So before we wrap that up, we will actually just have a couple of minutes just to make some final comments. We're now going to go for Ask Harry.
Fantastic.
So,
fantastic.
We have a couple of amusing questions.
Oh, good.
That have come.
So just to remind any new listeners, this is a little feature we have where I have 2 minutes to answer a science question which has been posed to me. I haven't heard about this beforehand, and I have to say whatever I know about it. And if I know nothing about it at all, I have to essentially riff for 2 minutes.
Yes, and even if you do know something and you feel like you need to stop because you've finished, you still have to keep going.
Indeed. So it could be knowledge and riff.
Yeah.
So you probably won't know anything.
So this is my favourite question, although I'm not going to ask this to you. We've had a question that is firstly a gravity question. I would like to know if the elves would be taller if they didn't always stand up to make toys.
So is this the real question?
No.
No, this is just an interesting one.
Just an interesting question.
I like it.
Okay. Think about that.
Yeah, it's time to think about listeners.
Here's what I would like you to answer, though.
Okay.
It's a very typical question. I happen to know that the answer that most people give is wrong. So if you're not allowed to give the obvious answer because it's wrong, okay?
What if I think the obvious answer is the obvious answer?
Well, so the question is, why does time go faster the older you get? Okay. The idea of it, once you're 1 year old, by the time you're 2, that's all of your life that you've just lived again.
Indeed.
That is not correct. You're not allowed to use that one.
I'm not allowed to use that.
You're not allowed to use that.
So if you're 2, all of your life is...
That whole thing of once you've lived to 1 year...
Yes.
By the time you're then 2, you've lived your entire life again.
When
you're 80,
I see.
a year is 1/80th of your life. So that you can't use that because that's bad logic.
Of course.
So ask Harry, why does time go faster the older you get? I'm going to be timing you. You have 2 minutes. Go.
Right. So the time seems to go faster as you age because the formation of your personality occurs mostly in your former years. So, of course, everybody remembers that, the summer of your 8th year, it seems to last forever, endless running through fields and burning ants with magnifying glasses and all of that.
Strange child.
I was a strange child. And going to see grandparents and spending endless fortnights with them, it was probably only a few minutes in actuality. And then you reach 10 and school starts to pick up pace a little bit. You go past through your exams and so forth. You get to university, and this year seems to have gone incredibly quickly. I can't remember much of it, and I have stories from my dad and grandparents and so forth that they are pretty sure that their birthday was yesterday, and it's come around again today. And essentially, that is because as you age, the importance relative to the scope of your life decreases with each year. Your personality is essentially formulated, and your brain dictates that it's essentially not worth remembering any of this sensory information and any of these day-to-day occurrences, because it's not going to add anything to the essential the essential value of your collective knowledge. It's not going to help you survive. It's a survival instinct. It's a way of the neurotransmitters prioritizing what's important and what isn't, because of course we know all sensory information is gated. We retain what's important and we encode that to memories if it's going to help us survive, and if not, it is rejected.
Wow. Thanks, Harry. That was riveting.
Wasn't it?
Yep.
I have no idea.
I'm not even sure what you said.
Did you hear that pathetic kind of applause?
It was a slow clap, yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Akshay. Yes.
Yeah, for the kind of sarcastic clapping.
Yes, thank you. That really added to the little
Harry,
impact of that.
That was Ask Harry answering why does it that the time seems to get
and we
a little bit
apologise
longer
profusely.
I really don't know what you said. It was something. Actually, it was relatively interesting. There was something interesting.
I think there was something there.
It started interesting. I'll give you that.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
It was good until you started talking.
So it was something about. It's your new memories that are the way that you measure time, and when you're old, you're not making new memories.
I was getting around to the fact that the sensory information is gated. It was prioritized by your brain. Anything that isn't valuable is rejected. Sensory information, and anything that might be important and help you survive is encoded to memory, and therefore you've probably had all the experiences that are going to help you survive by the time you're a certain age.
So you have fewer markers.
Indeed, yes. There's no reason for your brain to mark it.
Yeah, everyone that's listening, can you send in more difficult questions next time?
Indeed. I felt that was actually something I might have known the answer to.
We want something that there's no way Harry can know.
Yes.
So
yes,
more difficult.
Phone in.
Have a think. Try and come up with something more difficult. So let's get some final remarks. Do we have to die, Akshay?
Do you want it in a word, a sentence, or
sentence?
Sentence.
A sentence. Right. From a biology perspective, no, but I'm not including all the ethical ramifications. But right now we have not enough research. So yes, right now, yes, we have to die.
Yeah, right now we have to die.
Yes.
Maybe in the future we may not have to die.
Yes, exactly.
Harry Amos, do we have to die?
I agree with Akshay.
That is good.
Going to give us a...
I could just repeat the same sentence, more or less.
You could.
That, it seems like at the moment we have to die, and maybe that sucks a little bit for us, but
also maybe it doesn't.
At the end of the day, it probably doesn't.
Die, things
because if we could live in a world where we couldn't die, maybe we'd decide to come back to this life, this universe.
Indeed.
True. Awesome. Thank you very much, Akshay and Harry. You have been wonderful. We've been asking, do we have to die? This is Because the Universe. I'm Matt Lane. He is Harry Manners.
I am indeed.
And we're going to go out on a song. We're going to go out on some Frank Sinatra.
We are. We're going to go out on Frank Sinatra. Here is Frank the Knife. Thanks for listening, everyone.
So if you could just remember that we'll be back in 2 weeks. That's the 22nd, Saturday the 22nd. Same time, 11 o'clock for Because the Universe, your satirical science radio show. And I also want to say, well done, Akshay, for filling in 2 mazes. I'm going to give you a miniature camembert as your prize. Harry Manners, you were on negative points because yours was terrible.
Of course I was. That was destined to be.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, listeners. Have a wonderful weekend. We will speak to you soon.
Thanks for listening, everyone.
Hi there, it's me again. We hope that you enjoyed that. Just to reiterate, if you are interested in coming on the show as a guest panellist, then just drop us an email at becausetheuniverse@aol.com. That's becausetheuniverse@aol.com. Tell us your name, what subject you're doing, a little bit about yourself, and we will get back to you.